Hey skiers, I'm Jeff from skiessentials.com.
I'm Bob. How's it going?
Welcome back to another 2024 ski comparison. Arguably the most important category of skis.
You'll find a lot of people on these skis no matter where you go.
Totally.
Like, it's definitely a huge all-encompassing range.
Yeah, I suppose you could like counter argue that like beginner skis is more important if you're talking volume of skis on snow.
Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of packages too.
Yeah, but this is a great category. There's a lot of really, really good skis here. And what I like about this category is there's a ton of variety too.
Yeah.
Like you find all sorts of stuff in the 90 millimeter all mountain range, which if you didn't pick up on it yet, that's where we are today. You know, the differences between Ripstick 88 and an MX 88 are huge, and then throw in a ZX 92 and
Yep, and a Blade Optic 92.
yeah, just very, very different skis.
Yeah.
So it creates a fun conversation, and Bob and I are always looking for ways to make these more interesting for you, and I suppose more interesting for us too,
Yeah,
although
sure.
they're always pretty darn interesting. If you've watched any bargain basement videos in the past, you may have seen that we have done what we like to call draft style organization.
Yep.
And don't overthink it. So basically what we did here is we took 22 skis and we had them on a piece of paper and we flipped a coin for who got first pick, and we just kind of made picks of like what we wanted to talk about more than like I did not pick skis over here based on my favorites necessarily. It's kind of just like going off what was exciting to me.
Yeah, and like if a ski is off the board, then you like first ski off the board, then you have 21 to choose from. Second ski off the board, 20. So we're kind of working our way down to the lower numbers, but certainly a caution not to think of a lower pick as a lower ski. But
yeah, and I can understand why somebody would
Yeah.
think that or would perceive it that way, but like I don't really feel much different about these 5 skis over here than like these 6 skis. Like there's still really, really good skis and good options for certain skiers, which we'll talk about. And I suppose I did start by being a bit selfish.
Well, if you didn't take it, I was going to take it. You got the first pick, so I think we both knew that there was no surprise there.
So we flipped a coin. I guessed heads. It happened to be heads. It was a coin flip app, if anybody's like referring to that concept of a coin flip not being true 50-50, which has been like popping up on social media and scientific publications recently. But the app, there's no like weighting variance or like you're not holding it. Doesn't matter how you're holding your phone when you press the button.
The app has saved a lot of fights in my household. It's like one of my best downloaded apps ever.
Great app. And yeah, my first pick was this Black Rose Miras Core, which like truthfully is a pretty major outlier in this category. But to me, it's just so much fun. And I really like a ski that I suppose like doesn't take itself too seriously, and a ski that can be a true reminder to me that the point of skiing for me is fun.
Right.
And I mean, I think it's fair to say the point of skiing for 99% of skiers is fun. If you're not racing or competing for something significant, then you're doing it for fun.
Right.
So I love the Black Rose Miras Core because it is just so much fun to ski. It's pretty expensive. I think we're up to $1,000 now for Miras Core, and it is relatively simple. So poplar wood core, and then we get a little bit of metal underfoot. I think like that's probably a relatively accurate representation of how long the metal is.
Yeah, I'd say.
So it is. There's some stiffness underfoot. You do get some high-end materials in this ski, but it's not wild. You know, I think you see a lot of other skis hit the $1,000 range with easier to pinpoint why.
Right.
You know, I think we talked about that with Black Rose a lot. A lot of it's just kind of their quality of manufacturing, and the brand is pretty popular right now. It's pretty sought after. So when you have a popular brand, not tremendously uncommon to see prices rise.
Correct.
So 1,830 grams in this ski. This is a 178 centimeter length, which happens to be the length that I ski. And really the thing that sets it apart, the thing that makes it an outlier in this category is its shape. So really this is kind of the only twin tip up here.
Yeah, and just a quick note, we would have put Captus in here, but that's Black Crow's twin tip representative.
Yeah, we decided the Captus fit better into this width range twin tip comparison, where the Miras Core kind of corresponds to some of these skis a little bit better because it focuses more on carving than the Captus. But anyways, so a decent amount of tip rocker in this ski. Obviously the shovel shape is wild, like it's just super wide and spoony. There's really not much camber to it. Like there is, but it's barely there. Yeah. It's almost flat. And then there's quite a bit of tail rocker too. And then you see that same kind of bulbous shape in the tail. A little bit of a swallowtail back here. I don't think it really does much in soft snow, which is traditionally what a swallowtail is designed for. I actually think it does more in kind of like taking away torsional stiffness from the tail. But yeah, big thing on this ski is the 13-meter radius. Super, super short. It's got to be the shortest turn radius up here. It's got to be.
Yeah, the Dynastar is
close,
short
but
too.
It's not 13, I don't think. 14 or 15 over there.
In this length, yeah.
Yeah, so super, super short turn radius. It's basically like a twin tip slalom ski. 87 underfoot, so obviously it's not as narrow as a slalom ski, but that's how I feel when I ski it. I just love ripping pretty short radius turns on this ski, and it's not hard to ski, and it's super, super rewarding. I think it's best for a super playful skier that kind of thinks outside the box and really wants to make short radius carves. You want to feel those kind of G-forces and that lateral acceleration. Just super fun. I also like it because I can go out and I feel like I can kind of carve at a reasonably high level, or like kind of work on that style of skiing and that technique, but then I can go jump in the park and slide some rails and hit some jumps, and just really fun. I skied it with my family on a day at Sugarbush, and like everyone else in my family skis a bit more casual and slower paced than me, so this ski was awesome because I just made like twice as many turns as them.
Right.
And I wasn't like waiting. If anything, they were waiting for me because I was making more turns.
Like, why is Jeff turning so much?
Yeah. And then, Bob, you skied it in the trees a little bit. We've got some footage of you kind of slipping and sliding around in the trees on it. And I do think that shape helps a lot. That tail rocker that we looked at, if you didn't have that with the width of the tail, if it was flatter back there, it would be kind of like a little bit harsh in the tail.
Right.
But it has a little bit of like surfy, smeary factor to it, which is super cool.
Yeah, you do have to be playful in the woods. You do have to let it kind of do its thing, kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not a directional ski.
No, there's like not much like feedback from the tail. It kind of just slides and washes.
Yeah, as opposed to something like a QST or this M-Cross 88, which have similarly shorter turn shape styles.
Yep.
But they're more active in the tail.
Yep.
So there is a difference in how they perform in trees and more technical zones versus something that's a little more directional.
But contrary to everything that I said in the intro of the video about not picking skis based on favorites, this is an exception to that because this truly is one of my favorite skis of all time.
Yep.
But it's also a ski that I don't recommend to a lot of skiers. It's a special kind of thing. I could see it working as like an all-mountain ski, but to me, the Miras Core is best for the type of skier that already owns a bunch of other stuff and they're looking for something different.
Yeah, I think it's a tough sell as a one and only, unless you're like a very specific skier that knows they're looking for that.
Totally. Limitations at speed.
Yeah.
That's like part of it. Like you can't get going too fast because there's not a ton of torsional stiffness in the extremities like we talked about with that kind of slit in the tail.
Yeah.
So it's like as soon as you go faster than like 30, 40 miles an hour, then the ski won't hold an edge anymore.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's one of the limitations. So it is kind of a unique thing, but undeniably super fun to ski.
Yeah, and a lot of us in this building are
Yeah.
Just ravenous fans.
Well, I don't think I've ever met anybody that doesn't like it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool.
Yeah. And I think you could say the same thing for my first pick here, the QST 92. You know,
that no one's ever skied it and not liked it.
I mean,
I think that's fair.
I would be surprised if that were the case.
Yeah.
This is about as well-rounded as it gets, whereas Jeff's Mirus Core does not fit the every person, every style type of skiing. This one does. And we've kind of talked about that for years, especially with this newer construction and shape that's been around the past 2 seasons, as it's really boosted the range to just an insane level.
Yeah, and like this is the ski where we usually fall on, like, if you don't know what ski to buy, just buy a QST 92.
Yeah.
It's not expensive.
Right.
And it does anything.
Yeah.
Doesn't like, it's one of those skis that it's not chasing superlatives. I know I've said that plenty of times before, but it's not the best at anything. It's just quite good at everything.
Quite good indeed. And not a terribly complicated build either. It's just a full poplar wood core. We do get the carbon and flax material in the shovels and the tails. A little bit beefier of a sidewall underfoot. That's adding to that torsional stiffness in the underfoot zone, just making that have more dampness and edge grip here. But the big story, kind of like your Mirus Core there, is the shape.
Yeah.
You know, we do see a lot of taper, that nice early taper here, and that follows through to like the QST 98 and the 106 as well. So the widest part of the ski is brought down pretty far, and that does make that shorter turn radius. This is the 176, and we're at 15 meters. So it is pretty short. I actually skied this one, this length, this year and really liked it. You know, I would opt for the 184. In fact, pretty much everything on my side, I would go a size higher, maybe with the exception of the K2. This thing comes in a 189, which is too long.
That's a lot of ski.
Yeah, I would keep it to the 182.
Yeah.
But this one in the 176, I was surprised at how well that it stood up to what I was putting into it. So I was impressed with that. But you see that same taper theory in the back too. So you are getting a shorter effective edge. Similar to the Mirus Core, you know, that does equate to a speed limit. It's a little bit more solid from tip to tail. You know, it does have some weight to it, 1,760 grams. You seem to have more of the heavy metal skis on your side, and I seem to have some of the lighter metals on mine.
I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but I have some fun thoughts about that.
Yeah, but it's super easy to turn. You know, you think and it turns.
Yeah.
It's just one of those skis that is just incredibly natural and innate.
Yep.
You know, no matter what the conditions or terrain, excellent snap and rebound out of the tail, super easy turn initiation, and just one of the best bump and tree skis up here. Even though it's the widest, you might think that it's going to lose some quickness, but it really doesn't.
Yeah, I don't think nothing in this category is too wide for bumps. It's like not a concern really.
Yeah, yeah, and just the fact that you're able to, you know, just really make those short S-shaped turns on this is just incredibly rewarding. But certainly my first pick, just due to the versatility.
Yeah.
You know, there are better performing skis up on this wall for sure, but none of them do everything as well as this.
Yeah, and like I think this is something that probably won't be surprising to people, and like maybe we've talked about this before. I think we have. The QST 92, it's one of those skis that, like, it seems to work a bit better for your skiing style than mine.
Yeah.
But the one kind of exception to that is like they've put enough rise in the tail now that I can like ski it like a twin tip sort of. So it's just interesting. Like if you hadn't picked it as your first pick, I probably wouldn't have picked it as my second pick.
Yeah.
Because it just doesn't have like attributes and characteristics that I'd necessarily look for. But those short quick turns, it is just so good. So.
Yeah, anything from hard to soft snow, it's exceptional.
Totally. Yeah. So yeah, Bob, you kind of alluded to it, but a lot of my picks are heavier, and I actually think my first 4 picks are interesting because you kind of go playful, serious, playful, serious.
Yep.
And I wonder if that's surprising to people, to our audience in general, that I would pick more of the metal-clad skis than you. But it definitely makes sense. Like, I like to ski fast and make big, wide-open, sweeping turns, I'd say more than you do.
Yeah. So
that's kind of why I gravitated to a lot of these skis, to Enforcer 88, to Brahma, to Stance 90, Stormrider 88, and MX 88. Like, I kind of, if I had Kendo over here too, I'd basically have like a monopoly over, oh, and Declivity 92. I'd need both of those skis. Maybe at the end we can make some trades, Bob.
Okay.
So
maybe
anyways,
not though. I don't know. I like my side.
This is the Nordica Enforcer 88, and I love this ski. It is awesome. I like it for very different reasons than I like something like the Miras Core.
Yeah.
So this ski has a performance wood core, pretty dense wood core. Nordica uses it in just about all the Enforcer skis. And then we get those 2 sheets of metal that are consistent across all Enforcers. This is the shortest length we have up here. This is the 172. I generally prefer this ski in a 179. Still 1,925 grams. So if we did have the 179, I'm almost positive we'd be over 2,000 grams. So it's not the lightest ski in the world, and it's pretty stiff. You know, those 2 sheets of metal in there and that dense wood core, it creates a pretty stiff flex pattern. So this ski is pretty darn aggressive and powerful. Again, it's like stuff that we've talked about a lot, but I really like the Enforcer shape. And I think when you combine this much power and strength with a kind of slightly more versatile shape, you get a really cool ski. And it's something that, to me, feels a little bit more dynamic than some of the other really strong carvers up here. And I think in any situation where that's the conversation, those skis that are less versatile or dynamic are also more precise. So it's just constantly a give or take. But good amount of tip rocker in this ski for a ski that's 88 underfoot with 2 sheets of metal. That's kind of a modern shaping thing, even though Enforcers are, what, 6 years old?
They're getting up
there. Much less tail rocker. There is a decent amount when you're kind of considering the length, but there's not much splay there at all. And then the kind of the key thing for these skis, this is a weird representation because it is that 172, but this is a 15.5 meter radius. I think the 179 is 16.5.
Yeah, they go up by 1.
So while it's not as short as a Miras Core, it's pretty short. And I think it's shorter than, without like taking up too much time right now, I believe it's shorter than Brahma, Stance, Stormrider, MX, Kendo, and Declivity. So if you're kind of like taking that group of directional all-mountain skis with metal, Enforcers have a pretty short turn radius, and that, for me as a skier, just helps a ton. It just makes them come across the fall line really easily. Honestly, like, that's probably the only similarity with the Miras Core, is like you get that like super snappy, energetic kind of finish to a turn as it comes across the fall line. But yeah, just super fun to ski, and there's really no speed limit to Enforcers. You know, where we had a speed limit with Miras Core, I'd say QST 92 certainly has a speed limit, especially when it comes to carving. You won't find a speed limit here. Maybe if you're on a shorter length, like if I was skiing this 172, it would get a little nervous at higher speeds, probably similarly to you on the 179. But yeah, it's just awesome. Carves really, really well, but then you can ski it in softer snow, you can ski it in off-piste terrain, and it's not too punishing. It's best for a pretty darn good skier if you're gonna be using it, especially off-piste, and I'd say it's best for a pretty darn good skier, period.
The accessibility of that shorter turn shape is considerably different than the Miras Core or
a QST.
Yeah. Like, being able to get there is not easy.
Yeah, and I don't remember if we did look at flex pattern, but there are stiffer skis.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that helps somebody like me, at least with a lighter build than some. Just like, it's not not too punishing, but it's not easy either.
Right.
Great ski.
Yeah, and like I own that in the 186, and I would trade it for this in the 184, just because this thing is more engaging and active.
Sure.
So I was excited that you chose that one so that I could have this one.
Well, and I think it makes sense.
Yeah.
I think there are attributes to kendo. I love skiing that kendo, but there are attributes to the kendo that I feel like work better for you.
Yeah. Yeah, and this, I mean, it's just incredibly rewarding and precise. For a while, the kendo, the older version of the kendo, especially before they went to the Titanal frame, was a little bit on the planky side. And while that worked really well for a lot of skiers that were very aggressive and very straight line, it didn't line up well with those that really wanted to focus on varying carved turn styles. And so when they went to this Titanal frame technology, and then even a step further with the tailored Titanal frame found here and the new carbon tip format that we saw last year, it really just brought the versatility of the turn shape and style to the next level.
100%.
1,930 grams, so heavy-ish. You know, this is a slightly longer length than your
Right, so
172.
lighter than an Enforcer.
Lighter than
if
an
we're
Enforcer,
looking at
yep.
comparable lengths.
Yeah, and there's less metal. It doesn't have that full top sheet. It is broken up into the 3 distinct portions here. So the front frame, the rear frame, and then full width metal underfoot. But it really goes well together. And when you look at kind of where these breaks happen in the metal, that really allows the ski to achieve that nice round turn shape that was most impressive to me with this newer kendo build.
Yep.
Is that you're finally able to take this performance and access it. Especially for someone that's a little bit heavier, I found it to be most rewarding when you're standing on it and then you can really vary your pressure to make the ski do different things even with the same turn.
Yep.
And without thinking about it too much, what you're doing is you're accessing the 3D radius side cut.
Yep.
So you can feel it really well in this ski, I think, because it's capable of making those higher edge angles. It's not terribly overpowering. And when you're standing on it and engaged, you can really mix it up. And that's really one of the best parts. Those numbers, what have we got here? My vision, Jeff. 29, 16, 25. So if you're staying in the middle of this ski, you're accessing a nice short turn radius. Where it really comes into play is in those higher speeds, in that longer turn shape, in the tips and tails. You can carve very, very clean, round, and long turns.
Yep.
So the difference between your turn shape and style in the kendo is just off the charts fun.
Yeah.
You sacrifice a little bit in versatility when you're getting on this thing. Similar to the Enforcer, it's, you know, certainly on the higher end of the performance spectrum, so that's going to take your versatility down a bit.
Yeah, I've always thought that Enforcer is slightly more versatile for soft snow and kendo is slightly more precise, just like we were saying. Like you're always going to have a trade-off.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm glad you brought up your weight, because I think that's part of it. Like, I love this ski. The kendo is awesome, and like I had so much fun, particularly out in Sun Valley, kind of when they like unveiled the latest version of it. But I have to work really hard. Yeah. You know, to do that same thing that you were just talking about of like pressuring different portions of the ski to make different turns. Because I'm not as heavy as you, it's all through force,
right,
rather than just skier weight. So that means I really have to be at a high edge angle and stuff like that. And I think like the 3D radius allows for those shorter skidded turns that you like to make, more so than really any other of those skis that we kind of put in that 2 sheets of metal or metal clad category. So it makes sense that it meshes really well with you.
And I was actually pretty impressed with how well this handled bumps and trees, you know, because it's not super heavy.
Yeah.
You know, the lightness attributes to the versatility.
100%.
You know, it's as opposed
and the long radius in the tips and tails.
Yeah, you can move it.
Catchy.
Not a lot of camber underfoot. We kind of see that as a theme throughout these Völkl skis with a longer but lower rocker. So interesting, like Kendo, Mantra 102, all share this very similar rocker and taper shape, whereas when you're in Enforcer land, it starts to get more dramatic as you get wider.
More progressive.
Within these Völkl skis, it's more similar. But I love just standing on this thing and just playing around with slight pressures.
Yeah.
And you can really feel the difference.
I feel like for me that comes through more easily on the Deacon 84.
Yeah.
Because it's just built a little bit different, and I feel like it's easier for me to access that same exact thing that you're describing than it is on the Kendo. But I can do all those things on this ski.
Pretty much anyone can do anything on that ski. That is just unbelievable.
Yeah. So like I said, the start to my wall over here is pretty interesting. Really, my side of the wall is just fantastic.
Yeah.
This is the Elan Ripstick 88. And this ski is just so much fun to ski. I mean, we've talked about Ripsticks a ton over the years now. Wildly different than something like an Enforcer 88, even though they both are 88 underfoot. And basically, they're in the same category. They're all mountain skis that are 88 underfoot.
Yep.
So, tube light wood core in this ski. This is a carbon-powered ski rather than a metal-powered ski, and particularly the important ingredient in these skis is those carbon rods. So we don't need to get too far in depth into this, but basically when you have carbon in a three-dimensional format like that, it has much better vibration damping properties than a flat sheet of carbon.
Yeah.
So although these are pretty light and although they are carbon-based, they feel pretty darn smooth too, which I think is very, very commendable. 1,595 grams. So super, super lightweight in these skis, and one of the softer flex patterns too. I would say particularly up here in the shovel, that's where you always ask for your Ripstick 88 Black Edition non-vapor tip.
Yep.
For me, the soft flex in the shovel is much, much more of a benefit for my skiing than perhaps a hindrance for your skiing. And that's kind of, for me, what this ski is all about. It enters turns so easily. It is like one of the most intuitive skis I've ever felt in my entire life, and you have to give credit to the Amphibio profile, the left and right ski. So let's see, this is our, oh boy, this is always challenging. This is our right ski here. So along the inside edge of both the right and left ski, we have more camber. Along the outside edge is more rocker. That helps in soft snow, it really does, but for me, where it's most noticeable is just when you're transitioning carving turns. It feels like the ski has already done the initial phase of the transition for you.
Yep.
And it's just so cool. Definitely a limit to who can ski it if you're really aggressive. I think that's the big thing here. So I know you've gotten along with this ski just fine, but I would say if you took your body style and put it into a skier that just wanted to ski really, really fast all the time, they would not like this.
Especially through variable conditions.
Yeah.
I was impressed with this ski on firmer snow this year, more so than I have been in the past, but certainly you can tell that once that snow gets cut up, you're going to feel this part of the ski not being as engaged.
Yep, which is fine.
Yep.
Plenty of other options for that skier.
Totally.
But for somebody like myself who's on the lighter side of the spectrum, it's just so easy to bend, so you can kind of get it to snap into a shorter radius turn, even though we're not talking about 3D radius or anything with this ski. It's just purely out of the flex pattern of the ski. And then I really enjoy it or appreciate its ease of use and forgiveness in bumps. It's just so easy to ski, and like it's not stiff, it's not punishing. If you make a mistake and if your weight gets off balance, then you can recover really easily. I suppose it could wash out if you got really far in the back seat because it's not super supportive in the tail, but
anytime
that's not a concern for me.
Getting a little spoonier in the shovel, though, there is that potential for more deflection in the
moguls.
moguls.
You ski moguls a lot differently than I do. That doesn't happen.
I think this is a nice kind of visual representation of something that doesn't get deflected as easily. You know, especially when you're thinking about one ski going, you know, taking the hit and going this way, and the other one not.
Yep.
You know, these Dynastars, just with that narrower and more consistent tip, they're going to stay more together.
Yeah, but like for me, the stiff tail of the M Pro 90 makes it far harder to ski as a mogul ski.
Yeah.
Then I know exactly what you mean, but that's like almost completely lost on me.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, if like my ski gets deflected a little bit, I'll just move it back to where it needs to go.
And that's where these are great. It's so easy to get to correct your
exactly.
mistakes.
Like that's what I mean. Like if you make a mistake and if your weight gets off, you're gonna be before the next mogul. You're right back in it.
Totally.
So I think it's awesome. We don't talk about this too much with this category at all, but if you're also like looking for a resort touring ski, perfectly fine.
Sure, the weight is there.
Yeah, you can do like a Shift or a Duke PT or something like that. I don't love the idea of a tech binding on this ski because like Elan makes touring skis.
Right.
If you're gonna do that, just go buy a touring ski. But if you're trying to skin up or kind of get your legs moving in the morning before the lifts turn on, like a lot of people here in Stowe do, then you wouldn't have to go back to your car and change skis. You just keep skiing on these. So.
Well, I was sad that you got that early off the board because I wanted it, but I was happy that its Armada counterpart
made its way onto yours.
Yeah, dropped to the end, and I was able to pick this up in a later round because I find them to be very comparable skis, and we'll get to that. But
I was bummed that you kind of snagged this one out from under me.
You could have had a first, second, or third, Jeff.
I know. I got a little bit too confident going Ripstick 88 third.
It's not off the trading block, just for future reference.
Coming after it.
This is the Declivity 92 Ti. Another just really high performance ski. Fits right in well with the other metal powered skis, Kendo, Stance.
Even more now since they changed this, which makes sense because they're sister companies.
Yeah, so this one has the Karuba wood core. With that sheet of articulated Titanal metal in here. So taking slits out and filling it with elastomer material really just makes that torsional stiffness still there while keeping the ski more planted on the snow. It's mainly for vibration damping and keeping the ski on its intended line without taking out too much metal. Salomon, they've now added that a slit, which Jeff can talk about when he gets to his, but again, not using that full metal to, keep the dampness and the power there without taking away from that high-end performance.
Yep.
But these skis are awesome. I think that we've been on them now for a few years and really just kind of enjoyed how they mix that on-trail performance with off-piste playfulness and still with a good sense of adventure. Nice spoony shovel here. We're -42 on the scale. I think we got to tear this thing off here.
I got you, bud.
Okay. But yeah, it does still end up being a little bit on the lighter side with that lighter Karuba wood core, that metal 1,850 grams. Thank you.
That's -40.
Yeah. That didn't seem to make sense, but you do get that excellent blend of performance with the metal, the energy with the Karuba. You think about lightweight woods and they're not all that soft. When we talk about Polonia as well, it's light, but it's stiff. So, you're definitely getting a good amount of flex and a good amount of rebound in this thing. Tons of energy. It definitely leads to that edge grip. And then with probably more camber than most skis on this wall,
a lot, yeah.
They're really building that energy into it as well.
Yeah.
So couple things working in its favor in terms of getting just that nice pop. Long camber as well. When we're not decambered, it really comes up to right about where the rocker starts. So you're getting that long effective edge, nice and smooth. Kind of operates on the same philosophy as a Liberty here and even this Dynastar M-Cross, where we're using long camber in order to increase the effective edge. But great, well-rounded ski.
Yeah.
You know, some tail rocker, but it's not like it's vastly different from your Enforcer over there. You know,
I think just a little more splay.
A little more splay, but similar length and similar style. More of a bulbous tail shape, so that's going to give you just an added kick out of the end. And 17.5 meter turn radius here in the 180, I think.
Yeah, it's got to be.
Yeah, it's got to be the 180. So really well-rounded, but lots of energy. And I think that that's just kind of Armada's influence. They're making this ski engaging and interesting with a very high-performance ceiling. But I had a good time following Matt. I think he skied like 3 top-to-bottom runs.
Oh, way more than that. Trust me, because I was just searching through the footage yesterday.
I mean, there's a ton.
And they're they're watching it right now.
Yeah.
But no, it was fun watching Matt ski it, and I thought it wasn't like it changed my opinion of the ski, but it was a nice reminder of what it can do.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like when I ski the Declivity 92, and I owned a Declivity 92, if some of you may know, and I didn't get rid of it because I didn't like it anymore. I got rid of it because I kind of needed the binding for work purposes. Feels weird.
Right, where else would you find bindings? Had to take them off a ski.
I already owned those, so I took them off a ski, and I ended up gifting these to a coworker. But when I ski them, I really love how well they carve, how smooth they are, vibration damping. It's one of those skis that just feels like it's glued to the snow surface. But then, like, Matt's bigger than me, he's younger, he's definitely stronger. And watching him ski it, he brought out a lot of playfulness from the ski. And it was a nice refresher, a nice reminder for me of like, oh yeah, like that ski, it fits in that all-mountain ski or directional all-mountain ski with metal category, but it does it with that Armada vibe, which is important to remember.
And another thing is like very quiet. You know, when we talk about like quiet and smooth skis, we're normally talking about Stokely. And a lot of people kind of come at us with what's a less expensive version of a Stokely.
Yeah.
And I always kind of point to Declivity series, just in terms of keeping things on that smooth and quiet side.
Yeah, the vibration damping is like off the charts.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. Next ski over here is the Blizzard Brahma 88. I feel like if anybody was going to be surprised, or if there was any ski that was going to kind of shock people that it was on my side, this would probably be it. And really, I chose this ski for my side of the wall because whatever ski I said doesn't chase superlatives, this ski is the opposite. This has to be the strongest ski on this wall. I know Kesley fans are probably like screaming as they're watching this video, and that's the ski that I would put in there as like, maybe that's as strong. But I mean, Brahma 88, or Brahma in general, has made a name for itself. Now we have the 82, so you have to differentiate and say that it's the 88. But this ski has been really the strongest, if not, or one of the strongest, if not the strongest all-mountain skis in this width range for, what, 6 years, 8 years?
Yeah.
A long time.
You know, it changed a little bit when they went to True Blend, but it didn't lose that top end.
Yep.
Which I think is impressive. It really just increased the range.
Totally. So True Blend wood core in this ski, and then we really get like 2.5 sheets of metal. So more metal in this ski than any other ski on this wall. And even like when you hold it and look at the sidewall, you're like, whoa, that literally is 3 sheets of metal. Like you can see it in the ski. It's the real deal. Just under 2,000 grams. So give a lot of credit to that True Blend wood core of bringing the weight down a little bit. It's not tremendously heavy, but it is still tremendously stiff. Like it's, is it the stiffest ski up here?
Kesley will probably give it a run for its money.
And normally, no, it's way stiffer than this. I mean, this is a stiff ski, but yeah, Brahma's got to be the stiffest ski up here. And then turn radius, this is the 177. This is a 16-meter turn radius, and boy, I'm glad it's 16 and not 20.
I mean, even at 16, it feels like 20.
It
doesn't. It is more difficult to get that than the Enforcer, and especially if you're
way different than the Enforcer. Yeah.
And if you're looking like this, here's another one that I won't ski in the 189. The 183 is wonderful.
Yeah.
Our coworker Luke on the other side of that wall, he's in the market for a 189.
I'm glad you brought him up because I was going to bring him up.
Yeah.
The other person I was going to bring up is Ryan Daniel, who I don't know if we have footage of him on this ski, but you will see footage of him in this video. I know I've got Stance Ryan footage.
I think he has Evolve footage.
Yeah, he should. But you've seen him before. He's a good friend of Ski Essentials and a really good friend of like a lot of people on our staff personally. He's got a really strong race background. He still works in the race world. He's like one of the best kind of race boot fitters in the area. And in our local Ski Bum race league, he races on a Brahma 88 and like wins.
With a derby plate and a pivot on it.
Yeah. It's a Brahma 88 with a race plate and a pivot.
And an old Brahma, not a True Blend Brahma.
Yeah, but which is more similar than different in my opinion. But like, what a good representation of what this ski can do and like who it's best for.
Yeah.
And for me, like I don't pretend that I can really benefit from everything this ski can do, but I appreciate everything that it can do. I just don't know. I'm not really up for it most days of like really driving the shovel of the ski on super steep, firm terrain with all of my power. But I appreciate its ability, which is why I picked it fourth.
Yeah. No, and you're not going to get like more power, which is I think is a great reason to pick that specific ski.
And worth pointing out that it is the stiffest ski on this wall. It's stiffer than Core 87, if anybody's wondering that, because I flexed that before we started filming. But a little different than the Kesley, which we'll look at in a little bit. They round out the tail just a tiny bit, which I think is really important because with its stiffness and its weight and its power, they had to give it something that gives it some forgiveness and ease of use. And it barely has any of those things, but at least it's got some.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. And I love it in the 183. You know, I think that you still need to get it up to speed to get, at least on groomers, you need to get it going for it to really engage. The 189, just you need to go straight until you hit 40, and then you can start turning. The 183 and the 189 are very different skis. Like, I feel like I can handle the 183 in bumps and trees and other tight spots while still enjoying it in a carved turn, but...
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way between 177 and 183.
Yeah.
Like, there's no point in me skiing the 183.
Yeah. No, there's just more, you're engaged more in the process with the 177.
Totally.
And, yeah, I mean, it's a burly ski.
I guess I kind of left this thing out when we were talking about metal-clad all-mountain skis, but this deserves a spot in that category.
It's a good mix. I think it holds a lot of the same properties that the Declivity has, where it is metal powered, but it also has, quite a bit of versatility and more of that all mountain and adventurous spirit to it. The Mindbender 89 Ti, really an energetic and engaging ski. I always talk about, and I'd say that the tail is very similar between these two.
Rocker might be a little longer in
the
Mindbender.
K2.
I'm curious to look.
But I pretty much talk about the tail of this ski first when I talk about the shape, because you get such a strong kick out of it. We've kind of been talking about these skis with shorter turn shapes and shorter styles, and this one fits into that mold really well too. This is the 176. I don't see a radius on this one here, but it's short. Forgive me for cheating. 16.6 in the 182, so we're in the shorter length, we're down to 15s, I'm pretty sure. What did that say for weight there?
18 something something?
Yeah, so sub 1900 grams. I am enjoying this in the 182. I've never skied it in the longer length. I can't imagine that I'd imagine it's like the Brahma in the long length where you really just have to go.
I think so, and I think you'd lose out on a little bit of its quickness and kind of versatility in off-piste terrain, which I think it has some.
Yeah, But yeah, slightly more and longer rocker than the Armada. You know, long, and then a little bit of splay at the end. And then that tail shape from this perspective certainly has more of that kick out at the end, like that Armada, and
just a little longer
of that tail rocker. But they do use their Aspenwood core and their Titanal Y-frame in here, so we do have the metal that is along the edges, up in the forebody, full width underfoot, and then in the tail, the new tail shape that we got, or the new style that we got last year, there's more of like this bulbous area in the back. It used to just be straight, kind of like we see in the shovel of the Dynastar here, but now there's like more metal. It extends further, so they're putting in a little bit more power and damping properties in the back of the ski. So it's interesting because it engages and holds really well, and then just the tail of the ski just rockets you out of the turn.
Yep.
You know, almost to the point where you need to mentally prepare and be like, okay,
yep,
I'm gonna get a lot of energy. I need to, you know, prepare my balance to be on the other side of the turn before my brain might be ready for it. But really interesting flex. You know, it's a little bit softer in the shovel, and I think that that works really well, especially when we're considering the versatility. So as good as it does on trail, I'd be very happy to take this in any off-trail situation as well.
Would you say Stance 90, Declivity 92, and Mindbender 89 Ti are kind of the best soft snow skis in that metal-clad grouping?
Yeah, because we're basically breaking them down. So Enforcer, Brahma, Kendo, that's like tier 1.
MX.
MX, yep, sorry. Yeah. I kind of...
That's in its own tier?
Yeah.
Fair enough.
And then that next tier down in terms of accessibility, yeah, I agree. K2, Armada, which one else did you say? Stance.
Stance, yeah.
And to some degree, the Maverick as well.
Yeah, it just does it a little differently.
Yeah, it does it differently.
Yeah. It's almost like I should have been including Maverick too when I was talking about skis with metal in them.
Right.
But it's so much lighter that for some reason that ski, for me, feels like it has a different personality.
Yeah.
It's not as heavy and damp. It's way more energetic.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's worse, it's just different.
Totally. Yeah, this one also just has a very quiet feel to it, you know, similar to this Armada. You know, it's very vibration free and just a really rewarding ski, especially in an on-trail perspective, but you know, don't overlook the off-trail performance.
Totally. It's for an aggressive all-mountain skier that probably spends at least 60% of their time on groomers, but less than 80%.
Yeah.
Like you're going off trail a considerable amount.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's really fun in the bumps. Like it has a nice even flex pattern that I like.
Yeah. Next ski is the Head Core 87 here. So I don't know, people maybe know that I have an interesting relationship with Head Core skis because they're stiff and they're hard for me to bend. And I've really talked about that mostly with the 99. That's where I struggle the most from a flex pattern perspective, but it happens with me in the 93 too. And I've kind of just not overlooked, but I didn't really consider this Core 87 as an option for myself really until this past season. And I spent more time on it this past year, and I really like the Core 87. It's, you know, we're 6 millimeters narrower than the 93. So the edge-to-edge quickness is noticeable in this ski compared to the 93. And it is a little lighter, and I think it's a little bit softer flexing in a longitudinal sense, and I think it's a little softer from a torsional stiffness perspective. And you might think that that makes it worse. Like I said, you know, I said less a lot of times in that description, but for me that helps.
Yeah.
Because it's less punishing than the 93 and the 99 in the Core series. So for me, I just find that I can manipulate it a little more, I can bend it a little more, and for me it's more of a beneficial and useful tool for all mountain skiing than the 93 and the 99. So built the same way, Karuba wood core, we get that chamfered carbon application, so a little bit of 3D carbon in there. Much different than really what we talked about in Ripstick, but at least it's happening.
Right.
You know, I think this ski is a little bit more harsh and maybe a little bit more pingy than Ripsticks. It's definitely stiffer too, so a lot of that's coming from that. We get graphene, and it is a stiff flex. You know, we were kind of talking about the stiffest skis up here, and I was saying Brahma's the stiffest. This might be the second stiffest, the third. It's right up there.
But think about like weight to stiffness ratio.
Weight to stiffness, it's off the chart. Yeah, which like we've looked at before. We've kind of plotted those things, and it's really interesting to look at the combination of lightweight and stiffness and how this ski falls compared to other things. Under 1,700 grams, so 1,690 grams in this ski, and I believe this is the 177 centimeter length, and then turn radius is 16 meters. I think you'll be able to see it in the footage. I can bend it more, so it's more rewarding just carving turns on a groomer, and then I really appreciate its precision.
Yeah.
It just goes exactly where you tell it to go because it's narrower and it's stiff. I think it's like really important for all core skis that they have kind of like a little bit of smooth, rounded early taper through the shovel. I think if they were shaped like an MX, it would be like weirdly twitchy. But this shape kind of lets it, I don't know, it lets it skid and smear and wander just enough that it's not like too demanding, too tiring.
Yeah, the weight makes up a lot for any stiffness in terms of demand.
Yeah.
So you can still, at the end of the day, you can move it.
Yeah, right. It's just so easy to move laterally that it helps a lot. So I was kind of surprised that I developed a fondness for Core 87. I don't really know that I would own one, but I'm going to recommend them to a lot of skiers.
Totally.
You know, if you're like really any kind of all-mountain skier that appreciates having a lightweight ski, you know, whether you like skiing the trees or the moguls, or you just like making quick turns on the side of the trail, or you just want your skis to be light to carry them to and from the lift, like it's a really good choice.
Yeah, and it's always interesting. Like you go from 87, and then I feel like you skip right to 105 or even 111.
In cores.
In cores.
Yes.
Whereas I'm 93, 99 pretty much all day.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
It's more material in the 93 and 99 that share the same shape as that 87.
Yeah, I want less material.
You want less material.
Yeah.
And for me, that's too little material for that weight.
Where then it is twitchy for you.
Yeah. But I don't get it from the 93 or the 99.
Yeah.
So it's just amazing how when something's so light, just the added surface area, the added stuff in the ski really does make a difference.
Makes a huge difference.
Yeah. And since they're like built and shaped like the exact same way, you can really tell. And because they're so precise, it just adds to the skier's ability to feel those what could seem to be a minute difference.
No, great point.
Really adds up.
Yeah, great point. They're like so precise that it's easy to it's easy to feel and differentiate between them.
Yeah, very interesting skis. And always an interesting conversation with Core, I think.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious about the future of Core. I don't know anything about the future of Core, but I'm very curious what will happen.
Yeah, me too. Speaking of future, I think this is one of our
like
only
shapes.
New ski. The ZX92, I guess, could be considered, but this is a whole category change.
Yeah, and it's really interesting too because it kind of has like a different goal than a lot of skis on this wall.
Yeah, and interestingly, one of 3 Dina stars.
Yeah, you got all the Dina
all
stars
on my side of the wall.
Yep.
This is the M-Cross 88. We did a full review on this this spring. Really kind of spent a good portion of the end of the season on this ski, and there's a lot of interesting things going on here with very kind of modern tones and vibes to it.
Yep.
You know, they really are harnessing into short turn radius of the Miras core. They're looking at a more directional and friendly, you know, engaging aspect like your ripstick, but they're putting their own spin on it, as Dynastar does with their skis. From a construction perspective, very interesting in how they're building these wood cores. We've talked about horizontal laminates with Steadfast 85. DPS skis have a new kind of horizontal wood core laminate. I can't think of any others right now, but Dynastar's doing that. They got a new hybrid 2.0 core, which obviously sounds very futuristic. But basically they're using milling and joinery techniques to adhere these wood applications. So 3 different layers. So there's a flat one on the bottom, and then this upper laminate. And we got to see this, the actual core. Our Dynastar rep brought it in the other day. It was really, really interesting. So the top 2 are just basically milled and then joined together, not with adhesive, but just with pressure. So the wood joinery techniques accounts for the cohesion of the wood. And then they infuse that all in their polyurethane injected, you know, outer portions. And it was really interesting seeing that polyurethane kind of in person and feeling it and being like, wow, this is really, really light material, yet it contributes to a very smooth and powerful feel.
Yeah, it's become a really important ingredient for Dynastar skis.
Yep, so through M-Free, M-Pro, and now into M-Cross, that polyurethane surrounding this multi-level wood core is just one of the more sophisticated ski builds out there. And then similar to what we're seeing with K2, what else is your shaped metal over there?
We want shaped metal.
Well, we can talk about Black Crows.
Stance, Ranger,
thank you. That's a good one. And then like Black Crow's Justice or Serpo kind of have that H-shaped metal, which this is very much similar to that. So full metal underfoot, 2 layers actually, and then the top laminate just goes out a little bit into the tips and tails, but not a full length. So you're really getting that strength and power underfoot, and then you're able to access this pretty dramatic shape. So not only from a build perspective, but also that shaping standpoint, this ski is pretty unique.
Yeah, is it the widest tip?
It's got a very wide tip. 135, 88, 117. So 14-meter turn radius in this 176. It's basically like a directional Miras core.
Yeah, kind of.
You know, they accomplish similar things, have a similar goal of being a fun and playful carving ski, but this thing just falls way more to the directional side of the spectrum. You know, wide shovel, they're really kind of harnessing that. And then that long rocker, similar to what we saw with Declivity. So building that energy into the rocker, and then very minimal rocker in the tail, really, if any, and not a whole lot of taper either, just a little bit at the very end. But overall, super long effective edge, very smooth ski.
Yeah, really easy to ski.
I got along great with this thing. I love this thing. I'm very impressed with how it handles even longer turns, just because of that longer effective edge. But I found it to be a really engaging carver. We skied it mostly in like spring snow, which was firm to start and then softened up. So it was good to see it in variable conditions.
Yeah.
I thought it did great. You know, I wasn't, you know, it's not going to blast through like a kendo will, but it certainly does just fine. There's no issues with how this thing handles adverse conditions and even more aggressive skiing.
Probably the floatiest of all 88s.
Yeah, you know, it's not like it's crazy splay.
No, it's just the width.
It's low, but it's long and kind of has that nice tapered shape to it.
Yeah.
And then not
porpoises.
Like, yeah. I mean, it's really rewarding. You know, most of the flex is found kind of above this top of the metal here, and I didn't find it hingy.
No.
You know, you could say that that might be a possible outcome, but I think that
No,
the rest of the build makes it consistent. Yeah, but nice flat tail. That thing really just kind of cuts right through to the bottom and just, you know, scoots you out of the turn and into the next one.
Honestly, it's another good one in that concept of, like, if you don't know what ski to buy, you could just buy an M-Cross 88.
Yeah, I think most people are going to get this for on-trail, more carving purposes, and I think it's important to separate it from M Pro, you know, not just with the metal, but with the application. Even just looking at it kind of from our angle here, there's just a lot more bend and curvature to the shovel of the M Pro, and that's giving it that softer snow entry point, but more power overall in the M Pro. So
I think M-Cross is more approachable too.
Yeah, totally.
Like, I put an intermediate skier on an M-Cross all day long.
Yep.
They're gonna have a great time.
Yep.
Where that M Pro starts to become a bit of a handful.
Yeah, definitely a stiffer tail in the M Pro and that longer turn shape too. So it's like another 2 meters in this M Pro. But I think that this is a great direction for Dynastar. But I don't know. I
1750.
Yeah, 1750, under 800 grams, 1800, and you are getting that metal in there. So I think this is a great addition to the Dynastar lineup. Even though we have multiple skis in this realm, it's always interesting to see which companies put more emphasis and focus on certain categories like this.
Yeah, and like pretty agile.
Yeah, easy to make quick turns. I mean, like really engaging. You can really get it to go right and left super quick and really easy.
When you have like a big difference between tip and tail dimensions, it just like ticks up the agility of the ski because the tail feels like it swings around so easily rather than if you had a really wide tail. You know, back to what we were saying about Mira's Core, like good thing they put that slit back there. Otherwise it would be like kind of a lot to get it to swing around.
Yep.
Next ski up here is the Salomon Stance 90. Back again, same shape, just a updated construction. So we'll actually see that in this next ski as well. A very, very similar story there. Basically what Salomon did is they just took the construction from the Stance women's skis and put it into the 90, 96, and 102 for men. So we get some Karuba in this build now. It's Poplar and Karuba. And then they changed this little window. It used to be CFX. Now it's carbon and basalt. So they basically replaced flax with basalt, which always feels like a funny thing to say out loud.
Right. If you put a handful of flax in one hand and a handful of basalt in the other, would you like...
Would I build a ski out of it?
Yeah.
I don't know. Probably not. And then Bob was mentioning this when he talked about declivities, but they basically just put 2 slits in the kind of forebody of the ski on either side of that carbon and basalt window there. But there's still a good amount of metal in this ski. You know, it's still tip to tail metal. They just take it out of that window. 1,750 grams, so this is the 176. Not too heavy.
Nope.
You know, I think like bringing that lighter wood core into this ski helped a lot, especially just from a weight perspective. I would have been fine if they didn't change this ski. I wouldn't have been upset, but I do prefer this one. It took me a little while to get there, but for me at least, again, it's a little easier to bend.
Yeah.
It's a little lighter. It's a little bit more friendly. That previous Stance, I feel like it just got like, it got a little bit lost because it was almost like too close to a kendo, sort of. And then it was like, well, why would I stop skiing a kendo just to ski the same thing from a different brand?
Yeah.
Where now I think it differentiates itself a little bit more. Like we were saying with declivity, like they have really good soft snow performance. They have a touch of kind of free ride performance in them, which makes sense for Armada, and it makes sense for Salomon too. Like we have Salomon Free Ski TV, and they do all sorts of things in the free ride off-piste world. So I think it's cool that they bring that into this ski. You also see it in the shape. This isn't like, especially if we compared it to a QST 92, it doesn't have a lot of rocker, but it's got more rocker than something like a Brahma, something like a Kendo. So it does have a little bit more soft snow performance, a little bit more of that kind of surfy, easier edge release. I don't know that surfy is really the best word to describe these skis, but it's not too grippy when you don't want it to be.
Right.
18-meter turn radius, so a little longer than some of the radii that we've looked at so far, but it's not like jarringly stiff. So that for me is huge, and you'll definitely see it in the footage, is I think it's pretty easy to bend. So what I like about a ski like that, and it's, you know, a similar conversation to Ripstick 88, except this is a far more capable ski at speed, is it's just like skiing for me is about like reward. Yeah. And like how much input do I have to put in to get the same reward out of it, where this ski, probably more similar to something like the Enforcer 88 with that shorter turn radius and that ski, with this kind of the softer flex pattern or slightly softer flex pattern and more rocker, like I just find I'm able to manipulate it into what I want it to do and what I want it to provide for me as a skier more easily than Kendo, Brahma, MX88, stuff like that.
I think the interesting thing about the new build is that whatever perceived drop you're getting out of that top end from the old Stance 90 does not equate to the increase in range and versatility in the new build. So it's not a precipitous drop in on-trail carving performance, stability, power.
And its ceiling?
Yeah, it's a significant increase in the mid-range accessibility.
They're lowering the floor of who can choose it.
Yeah, and like I don't think that top tier skier, like you were saying, was seeking Stance 90 as their representative in this line.
Right, that was the problem. It was trying to position itself with Brahma and Kendo, and why is that skier ever going to stop skiing those skis?
Right.
There's no point.
I like the old build in the 90, but I really enjoy the new one in like the 96 and the 102. For me, it makes more sense in the wider ranges.
Yeah, that makes sense. But it's still pretty strong.
Yeah, no, I had no problems with that ceiling of this ski.
Yeah.
You know, it's really a slim group.
Yep. You'll see the difference between me skiing it and somebody like Ryan Daniels skiing it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like we put him on the Stance 90 and then he complained all day.
Right.
And was like, I can't even ski this thing. It was completely the opposite. Like he just ripped turns on it. So it's a really cool ski. It's going to satisfy people with high level carving demands, but then you can take it off trail. Yeah. Very, very similar to Declivity, which makes sense because sister companies, and like you alluded to, you'll see something similar in the next ski. It's just very different in how it feels.
Yeah. No, I like the traditional, like to me that's one of the more traditional skis on this wall. Like,
yeah, I agree.
Nice tip to tail consistency.
Yep.
You know, you're pressuring the tip.
Strong, damp.
Yep. Getting energy out of the tail. It's just, it's really well rounded in that regard.
Yep, I agree.
The Maverick conversation's interesting. Accomplishing a lot of similar things with kind of a different way about it. So Maverick has been about kind of starting thin and working your way up. You know, starting with that lighter, thinner wood core.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, and then putting 2 sheets of metal. So from a metal perspective, it's thin metal. We're looking at under 1,700 grams.
You're the second or third lightest ski that we've looked at so far.
Yeah. So like the core, we're mixing lightweight and stiff flex. Like this thing is a pretty stiff ski.
Totally.
And like it's especially stiff in the tail. So that's where we're seeing most of the energy and power come is really this very end, which is very stiff and responsive. But Maverick 88 does blend that lighter, more floaty tip with the Horizon Tech in here. And then that sidewall does taper to full cap, you know, at the ends, kind of where the rocker starts. So we do get a difference in terms of initiation in the forebody, you know, increase in grip as you get to the underfoot zone, and then it does keep it pretty stiff to the end.
Look at the difference in tip construction.
Right. I mean, this is just like so much thick
Vertical
metal and sidewall
thick.
all throughout.
Yeah.
Even with that Holotech, you know, they've taken material out.
Yeah.
Like picture that ski without the Holotech, and it's just crazy.
You could kind of do the same thing with Brahma. It's just not quite as severe.
Right.
That MX just stays so thick and vertical sidewall.
And those all have that continuous edge throughout. This does not. Edge stops here. So they are putting emphasis in that front part, very much like, you know, the Bent 90 in terms of harnessing that flotation without adding too much weight or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, really stiff and precise, like very knife-like ski. This thing just absolutely responds to your each and every input directly and, you know, with consequence.
Do you feel like it's like blending these two skis?
Yes.
I've thought that for a while now.
Yeah.
Because it's precise like this, but it's a little bit more playful like this. Kind of right in between.
You do have to like...
Maybe more like this.
Like this ski, you have to answer for your mistakes. We talked about that ripstick in terms of like that's going to help you on your way. If you get a little bit back on this one, or if you're not as balanced as you need to be, like it definitely keeps your momentum going back.
Yeah.
So I think that there's more kind of skill required to fully wrangle this, because it does have that lightweight, stiff, precise feel to it. So there's, you know, a lot of reactivity to the tail, which, you know, a lot of skiers really like. And if you're on it and you're pushing through it, you're going to get a very, very rewarding energy out of the turn.
Yeah,
so I think it's really, really interesting in that regard.
I also think it's something that's approachable and reasonable for somebody who is still like kind of developing their technique, because you can ski it at a flatter edge angle with like a decent amount of forgiveness. Like the rocker is fairly significant.
It's helpful.
So
you know, yeah.
Like there's less wrangling it when you're not bending it.
Yeah.
Because you can kind of just like wiggle it around and get it to make like really easy skidded turns.
It's not like curved. We kind of talked about this with like QST, like it's more of a kink, you know, like it ends and then it bends. So once you get past that certain spot, sure, you can get it to wiggle around at that lower edge angle. Yeah. But like if you're engaged, like it's like I've found that this thing takes you right around to the end.
Yeah, it's like one of those skis that you get what you put into it as for skier input equates to what you get out of it.
Yeah. And that's mainly a function of having those thin sheets of metal in there, is that it's very precise in its feedback. Yeah. Yeah, really interesting, but you know, I liked it in the moguls. Not my favorite, just because it's hard to get it to bend in the troughs. Yeah. So there's a lot of stiffness underfoot, and it's just a little bit more difficult. Yeah. But if you're doing more windshield wiper technique,
that's what I was going to say.
Like, just fine.
Yeah, I think a lot of skiers wouldn't find that. Yeah. They would find more of that flatter edge angle, ease of use, and forgiveness.
Right. And like for us here in Vermont, our moguls tend to have ice in between, and that's where something like this really comes in handy.
Yeah, grippy.
Yep.
Reliable.
Yeah, like no one likes being in between moguls and then having the ski just wash out.
Is that the worst feeling on skis? When you're in between moguls and it's just pure ice and you're trying to slow down but you're accelerating?
Yeah, I mean it's a helpless feeling.
That might be one of my least favorite feelings on skis.
What about when you go off a jump and then you see the landing go that way?
That's so much different.
Yeah. I don't know. That terrifies me. I'm fine with the icy in-betweens. I don't like it when the landing goes away.
Yeah, very, very different. Yeah. I suppose I know what to do in that situation more than you know what to do in that situation.
Well, I know what's going to happen in that situation, and that's why I don't.
You're going to fall?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can take deep landings, though, and, like, ski away from it. Not in one motion. Right. I mean, completely skid out, wash out, and then get up and be okay. I just find like that feeling of when you're accelerating, like you just feel helpless.
Yeah.
Anyways, moving on. Next ski is the Storm Rider 88 from Stokely. I feel like this ended up on my side of the wall because Bob loves his Montero AR, and these are really close in width now. I think like that's an interesting conversation that we've only really been having for less than 2 years now.
Yeah.
Is kind of the similarities in width between Montero AR and Storm Rider 88. And I think it doesn't like shock me that you prefer the Montero because it just is a little bit more robust.
Right.
So basically what happened with this ski for the upcoming ski season is they took the wood core and they just lightened it up a little bit. I think the ski shed about 100 grams per ski. So now we're right around 1,700 grams. So really quite similar to what we just looked at with Maverick, and that puts it as one of the lighter skis on this wall.
Yeah.
With Stokely, we get that Titanal top sheet in this ski, and then we get that rubber dust as well. Vibration damping in this ski is still off the charts, but I don't think it's one of the strongest skis on this wall, especially not now.
Right.
Previously, yeah. I was happy putting it in that same conversation with Brahma and MX88, but with the lighter wood core, it's interesting, and I think it's better as a product. So will it be worse for some skiers? Sure. And I think those skiers they have plenty of other options to choose from.
Yeah.
But I think there are more skiers out there that will benefit from and appreciate the combination of forgiveness and precision in this ski. In fact, it might be the best ski in the world for combining precision and forgiveness.
Yeah, no, totally. The things that it's done well in the past continue on into the future. There's like, no doubt about that.
Totally. If you're an intermediate and you want a really, really high-end, precise all-mountain ski, get a Storm Rider 88.
Yeah, totally accessible.
Like, if you can afford it, then go buy it. Don't buy an MX88.
No,
because
not for that skier.
That won't be that much fun. But I think an intermediate would do just fine on this. And then I think on the top end of its performance, you just don't want to be super heavy. I would say pretty confidently that it works better for me than it does for you.
Probably.
It's one of those skis where, yeah, if I was 50 pounds heavier, I feel like I could just kind of push right through it. But for me, I just appreciate and I benefit from that precision.
Yeah.
So it's smooth, it's easy to ski, I can put it exactly where I want it to go, and it's not too punishing, and it's not too harsh, and it's not too demanding. I've found that it got sort of deflected now a little bit, which is okay. It's just kind of that top end high speed thing. You have to keep that in the back of your mind, that it's not like you were saying, I don't remember what ski you were comparing it to, but you were it's not going to plow through things like a kendo. And I think that's true with the Storm Rider too. It's still more ski than Ripstick 88, ZX 92, Ranger 90, Mindbender 90. Yeah. It's still a good, trustworthy ski. But yeah, just be aware that it might get pinged around a little bit because it's so light.
It was interesting you brought up the Deacon 84 when we were talking about the kendo.
This feels like
I
a
think
Deacon
that's
84 kind of.
It's an interesting comparison, Deacon to kendo versus Montero AR to Storm Rider 88. Whereas I can benefit more from the kendo than
right. It's the opposite.
It's the opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would rather have a Montero AR versus that, but I'd rather have a kendo than a Deacon 84.
I might also rather have a Montero AR than this, but I do appreciate what this ski is trying to be. So I just wanted to point out the rocker profile, and then I'll let you continue, Bob. The precision that I'm talking about is really coming from the lack of rocker and lack of taper as well. There's really no taper in that tip shape, and then it's even more exaggerated in the tail. That is not tail rocker.
Right, and I wonder, we talked about the future of core. Is the future of Storm Rider is 88 going to follow what 96 did, bringing it more
95.
to 95? Thank you.
I hope
terms
so.
of bringing it to the more free-ridey side of the spectrum.
I kind of hope so, because you've been talking about it a lot over the past, I don't know, 10 months, 8 months, that like Montero AR is kind of cannibalizing Storm Rider 88 sales.
Yeah.
And like it has to be true, you know, as like the high-end Stokely customer who wants a really strong, powerful all-mountain ski, they're probably going Montero now, where, you know, that kind of leaves this ski like a little bit of a no man's land gray area type situation.
Right. How often is a Storm Rider skier really off trail?
Yeah.
You know,
and then why wouldn't you just get the 95?
Why wouldn't you get the 95? Or in my experience with the Montero, pretty darn versatile.
Sure. You're not stuck on trail in that ski.
Nope, you are not.
It's a little different when you go to the AX. Like that ski's not as great off trail, but yeah, it's just an interesting conversation, but I do still think there's a customer for this ski.
Totally.
And it's like, again, like intermediate has like negative connotations, and I hate that.
Yeah, I agree.
Because most skiers are intermediates. And if you're an intermediate and you've got a nice, comfy budget, go like buy a Storm Rider 88. Or if you're a lighter weight, advanced expert skier like myself, and you've got an unlimited budget, you too could buy a Storm Rider 88.
And we talked about that with the head shape EV10. Like this is a really technological ski, but it's more of an intermediate ski.
Yeah.
And that's fine. Like those skiers should have access to high-end stuff.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
And I don't want to like pigeonhole that as an intermediate ski because I don't think that's accurate, but it's approachable.
Yep. Yeah. Interesting for sure.
Yeah.
Where am I? Dynastar.
I know it's tricky with this format.
I know.
I've gotten almost lost a couple times over here.
I love the M Pro series of skis. I broke it again.
Yeah, I got you.
Okay.
It's challenging with the tail of the ski.
You know, we talked about the M Pro 85 in our mid-80s, the 99
in
the 100, and now the 90 gets its due. And it's a really, really interesting mix because it follows that same principle. And we talked about this earlier, you know, I think M-Cross and I think it was your Ripstick there. Just a very different shovel shape approach here. So long and consistent rocker, minimal, like there's no drama in the taper. It's very smooth and very subtle.
Yeah.
And that really allows you to just wiggle the front of the ski around. But then when you get to the tail, the story totally changes. So more metal in the tail, very stiff flex, and this thing just holds on to firm snow quite easily. Whereas this has the new updated Hybrid 2.0 core. This one is just the predecessor to that with the poplar wood and then the polyurethane on the sides. And then we get that metal laminate that is narrow and long in the forebody and then wide in the tail. So you're getting that difference. You're getting that initiation phase, that just clean, easy movement into a turn. And then from mid-foot back, this thing is just business.
Yeah.
It's incredible how well this thing carves and holds a turn.
I've always really enjoyed the phrase, like, it's a real skier's ski.
Yeah.
I think that's a good way to think about it.
Just under 1,800 grams, 1,760. And, you know, it's just really fun to see how different this shovel rocker is than some others up here. And for one that's kind of in the middle of the width spectrum, that really equates to this thing being a really nice soft snow ski that is, you know, very maneuverable in the woods. I think it's great in the bumps. I do prefer a stiffer tail in the moguls. You know, that's not really everyone's thing, but, you know, I find that the combination of it being super easy to put the tips where you want them to go and then being able to push down on that supportive tail makes it a lot of fun. But really nice overall ski.
Take a softer tail in the bumps any day, personally.
You're more than welcome to do that. You know, nothing crazy about the rocker back here or the taper. You know, it's more of a long, effective edge in the tail, similar to what we see in M-Cross, where there's nothing crazy going on back here, but the build and the flex really makes this thing hold on tight. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a grippy ski, but extremely rewarding and really well-rounded. I think this is just incredibly smooth. You know, we talked about the polyurethane and how that material is just, it's deceptively good in skis.
Right.
You know, it's kind of like we joked about with the flax and the basalt, like.
Yeah, it sounds gimmicky.
Yeah, it sounds weird, but
Yeah.
you know, the feel of it is drastically different than what you may think it is.
Totally. It's
So.
also interesting that they just call it like hybrid PU.
Yeah.
Like they don't. It doesn't feel like they're like really emphasizing the polyurethane in their skis.
Right.
They just kind of say like hybrid.
Yep.
Because I feel like people would be like, well, that's plastic, and my skis shouldn't have plastic in them. But turns out they should.
Yeah, and a lot, and for Dynastar, they all do, which is really very interesting.
I think we've talked about it before, but I feel like you feel the benefit of that polyurethane material more in the M-free skis because they don't have any metal.
Yeah.
So you're like just relying on that for vibration damping. But like having done that, having gone through that process, now I have a new appreciation of what it's doing inside these.
No, that's a really good point. You do feel it more without the metal. The metal does occupy.
Right, metal is still
that
doing
conversation.
metal is still doing what metal does,
Yeah.
which is absorb vibrations.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of they're doubling it up in that ski,
Yeah.
which is cool. Next ski up here, I just realized that I wore the right sweatshirt.
I noticed that. Yeah, I
got
noticed
both
it earlier. You
both
got
Kessler. It
Kessley's.
was unintentional.
I don't have a Dynastar sweatshirt.
Well, we're gonna have to change that,
Yeah.
won't we? This is the Kesley MX88. So back when we were talking about Brahma 88, and I was saying that that's the most powerful, strongest ski on this wall, and I was kind of saying that Kesley fans might be screaming at me through their screens. I totally would, like if you were screaming at me in that part of the video, rightfully so, because this ski is right there. I just find that wherever we were having this conversation, it's like a power versus precision type thing, where this ski feels a little bit more precise. So it kind of like depends on how you're perceiving those differences.
Yeah.
Like if you're a really, really aggressive skier who likes to ski super fast and straight through like anything, then I think you would take the Brahma and be like, this is the strongest ski. But if you're a more of an on-trail high-speed skier that just like focuses on carves, then I could totally understand you saying this is the strongest ski, because I think it probably has like the most torsional stiffness.
I always kind of think of this as having more race-like qualities.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the Brahma's a burly,
narrow, all-mountain free-ride-y thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This has no free ride
No. No.
characteristics to
No,
it.
and we'll look at why that is in just a second here. So there's plenty of metal in this ski. Poplar and beech wood core, so a pretty dense wood core, consistent with what we're seeing in other skis in this kind of range. 2 sheets of metal, really important with MX skis, that metal laminate. We do get Hollowtech up here in the tip, so the tip is slightly different than the rest of the ski in that you get just a little bit of a softer flex pattern up there in the tip, which I think really the only significant place where you're benefiting from that is turn initiation. I suppose it does take away a little bit of swing weight, but I don't even consider this thing when I'm thinking about off-trail skiing, and that's like really where I find the most benefit of swing weight. So to me, the Hollowtech is more for turn initiation. And the other thing that Hollowtech does that we don't talk about a ton is just reduces vibration damping.
Yeah,
because there's less material up here, so it's not going to flap, or maybe like vibration damping isn't the best way to think about it. It's more like tip chatter. It's basically completely removing that. But Bob, 1,930 grams. If we skipped that, I can't remember if we.
Nope, that was the first time you
said that out loud or not. Bob, you mentioned race-like qualities. Obviously, the build kind of reflects a race ski, a dense wood core and 2 sheets of metal. But for me, more of it's coming from the shape.
Sure.
Like we have shown skis on this wall with a dense wood core with 2 sheets of metal that have more freeride properties, more maneuverability and stuff like that. This ski basically doesn't have tip rocker. Like technically it does, but Barely.
Yeah, and certainly not when you're even the last ski we looked at, the Dynastar, like
or really anything.
It's totally different.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty different than really anything up here. And then there's no early taper in the tip at all. We're really maximizing effective edge, and then similar to Stokely, that is not tail rocker.
No,
there's not tail rocker in this ski, and there is barely taper.
And it's all metal.
Exactly.
Like there's no playfulness in that thing at
all metal in the tail of that ski. Like the last half inch or the last centimeter of the ski is just pure metal.
Yeah.
So a ton of torsional stiffness. The way it finishes a turn is just beautiful. But it comes along with some limitations in who should be skiing it and some limitations in what it can do. And you see like kind of the opposite with ZX92, right. Which it's cool that Kesley knows that. Kesley understands that there are limitations to what their skis can do, and they complement their own skis by building the opposite.
Yep.
Sort of. So I've always really enjoyed skiing this ski. I've worked in a shop or an organization that's a Kesley dealer for like 16 years. So I've been around a lot of MX88s, and I will always appreciate them, and I will always love skiing them. It's just, it's kind of a lot.
Yeah, there's a couple of different costs involved. There's the cost of performance. Sure. There's the cost of it being, a pretty specific item, and then there's just the cost.
Yeah.
So
that's a good point.
There are some barriers to most people, whereas like this is very inclusive.
Right.
It just
totally.
Says, hey,
anybody, come
on skiing.
Yeah.
Let's have a great time.
Right.
MX88 is certainly a little bit more on the other end.
Can you imagine if you had a group of 10 unknown, like you had never skied with these people before in your life, and you were taking like 10 people skiing and they all had to ski MX88s?
Yeah.
How nerve-wracking that would be. Where like, give me 10 people that I've never skied with before in my entire life, and give me 10 pairs of QST92s, and I don't have a single concern.
It's a different sport.
Yeah.
Like that is a totally different sport.
100%.
Yeah, but certainly a place for a Kesley MX88 on the ski hill.
100, yeah, absolutely. You see a fair amount of them at Stowe, and generally when you do, you see them on the feet of a really, really good skier, and they're making them do really impressive things.
Yeah, they have race boots and normally the kit.
I wonder if he can hear us. Probably can.
Yeah. You think he should look at one of those too?
I mentioned it the other day.
Yep.
Because we were talking about ski bum and race skis and the potential. I brought up Ryan's application with Brahmas, and I was like, have you considered MX88? And he was like, oh, I've never skied it.
Yeah.
I was like, ooh.
Right.
Could be onto something.
I like
here.
it.
So.
Yeah, interesting what's out there.
And interestingly, MX83, you might think is more race-like because it's narrower, but for me it feels less. That ski feels more approachable.
The decrease in material, similar to what we talked about with Core, makes a difference.
Exactly. It's really interesting.
Yeah. And an interesting transition to kind of like the QST, I would say one of the most playful skis on this wall. This is the Line Blade Optic 92, and just like very welcoming. There's a lot of things that this ski does really, really well. I am frankly surprised it dropped this far without you snagging it.
I also regret saying that the Miras Core was kind of the only twin tip up here.
Yeah.
Because I've seen people ski in the park on this thing
totally.
At like pretty high levels, so I admit that was a mistake on my end.
It's forgivable.
I'm only human.
Yeah.
If we were robots, this would be pretty boring, I bet.
No. AI hasn't got us yet.
No, we don't have an AI ski comparison yet.
But Blade Optic came about last year was the first year. This is year 2. And I'm getting my years confused, but
2 or 3?
2 or 3.
I don't remember.
Either way, took over for Sick Day a few years ago. And this is the narrowest of the Blade Optic series. It does not have metal in it like the wider ones do. So that kind of brings the playfulness of this thing to a different level and very comparable to a QST92 in that regard, in terms of it being sort of a multi-directional, multifaceted, playful all-mountain tool. Probably one of the more free-ride oriented skis on this list for sure. Mostly because it's like the narrowest of a wider free ride line. I mean, these go up to a 114.
I mean, the only ski that I was really going to say can compare to it, we haven't gotten to yet.
Yeah.
And the same is true. This is the narrowest of a group of wider skis.
And you could say that about like Enforcer. That's the narrowest of the Enforcer series, but they're very different.
A little different.
Yeah. But sort of a simple build. Aspen wood core here, you know, this raised portion is structural, but it's not metal. So there's just more stuff here. So it's following the same gas pedal metal overdrive theory as the 96, 104, 114, but just without the metal.
I believe it's just gas pedal fiberglass.
Yeah, I mean it's
probably
it's something, but it's a pretty flexible ski. They do a lot of kind of experimenting with the thinness and thickness. We talked about this with Maverick and how it's, you know, thick and strong, and then that tapers to cap, and that happens in line as well. So you do get a lot of edge grip underfoot. It's actually a really kind of confident carver for its weight, 1,720 grams, and that flex, you know, and it's kind of a consistent, you know, consistent in terms of being more flexible in the tips and tails and stiffer underfoot. But you get those playful tips and tails, you know, at 92 millimeters underfoot. It's just an incredibly easy and rewarding ski.
And core thickness is a proven way of controlling the flex pattern of the ski.
Yeah.
In fact, it's more important than material additives, which I think is something that people often get hung up on. Is like, we often talk about skis with metal in them, and along with that conversation is, this ski's very stiff. So intuitively, one might think metal equals stiff, but it's not that simple. Like, you can make a ski that's very stiff without metal. So
yeah, head core is you know, your perfect example of that. But like a lot of the other line skis, they do a great job of matching where the rocker starts versus where the cap or the sidewall ends. So that's emphasizing the playfulness in the tips and in the tails. So there's your other twin tip there, Jeff.
Yeah, it really is.
Certainly, but it's hard to it's hard to find a line that fits into this that's not a twin tip anymore, really. But
yeah,
that's why this isn't in twin tip. There's more better options.
And to me, it's a directional twin tip through and through. I have, like I said, I have seen people ski park on it at a pretty high level, but every time that I've skied it, it feels more like, or I'm focused more on its performance and its prowess as a directional, playful, off-piste ski than I am its freestyle capabilities. So great ski, kind of like that new Rustler 9. Like, we had a similar conversation with that. If you're an all-mountain skier that wants some ability in the park, sure,
yep.
And same thing with Blade Optic 92. And if anything, that park performance is a little bit enhanced in this ski compared to something like a Rustler, a little lighter.
Yeah, and great at the soft snow. I found a lot to like here, doing, you know, shorter skidded turns on the side of the trail. It's incredibly fun.
Yep.
Our former coworker Matt skied on these during the ski test, and he was unsure what to make of it. We were riding up the lift together, and he was on this, and then another guy was on the Miras Core. And to both of them, I said, focus on short turns.
Yeah.
And the ski will kind of unveil its personality to you. You know, they were totally blank on both of these skis. And Matt's a powerful skier, and he was able to get a lot of performance out of this to the point where he was very surprised and impressed.
And I changed his opinion by the end of it.
Oh, 100%. And you just kind of get that feeling from this that it punches above its level.
Yep.
So there is that accessibility, that playfulness, soft snow capabilities, bumps, trees. This is probably one of the better tree skis up here on the wall. But don't discount that energy from an on-trail perspective.
Yeah.
But it's certainly not going to lay down a carve like your MX-88.
No, nor like a Storm Rider or a Stance or a head, core, or a Brahma, or a ripstick, or it's certainly one of the worst carving skis on this wall, but there's a lot of just fantastic carving skis up here. So
yeah, no, it's tough competition, but like that QST, this thing really excels in its welcoming ability and its encompassing performance.
Next ski is the Fischer Ranger 90. This is an interesting one, and I understand why this is happening, but you don't see a ton of these. They're not very popular, and I think it's tough for existing Ranger customers to kind of like consider this ski. I feel like the Ranger customer has always been much more freeride oriented, and then like Fischer has an RC186 GT, which is like a ripping kind of 1 millimeter out of this category ski, like powerful, strong carving ski. So it leaves the Ranger 90 a little bit lost, I think you could say, but I think it's a really good ski, and I think there's a ton of applications for this ski that are certainly worthwhile to consider. There are other skis to consider too, but this one is pretty darn good. So poplar wood core in this ski, they basically drop the beach from the wider skis, so not quite as dense and a little bit lighter as well. We still get the shaped TI laminate. So in the 90, it is the longest, so a good amount of metal, but we do have those kind of slits, or they kind of extends into wings, so it's not just full width metal. It doesn't even actually reach the edge of the ski, which I've always thought was really interesting. And then they put that little the little flex cut in the middle, so it does have a pretty natural flex pattern, fairly stiff, not tremendously soft, but not the stiffest ski up here by any means. And I always really appreciate that right underfoot feel. I just feel like they've given it a bigger sweet spot by kind of putting that flex cut in there. The first time I saw this ski, I was like, that's going to be a really good mogul ski for Stowe. And I still think it's a really good mogul ski for Stowe. So if you're like an East Coast skier and you really, really like skiing moguls and off-piste terrain, a Ranger 90 is an awesome choice, and it still gives you reasonable on-trail performance. 1,840 grams before I take it off the scale here, so not the heaviest ski by any means. And then quite a lot of freeride influence in its shape. So a good amount of tip rocker up here, which is a big reason why I think it's great in the bumps, and then a decent amount of tail rocker too. And if you haven't picked up on it yet, for a bump ski, I personally need some forgiveness out of the tail, where you're going to take a stiff tail and use it to your advantage. To me, it's just a handful, and I have to work really hard. So I think it's a great mogul ski. Could be a really good kind of like low snow tree ski, again with that kind of like off-piste mentality. Like as a skier, you think more off-piste. But then our former coworker John, who's like an aging skier, I think is fair to say. He's not old by any means if he's watching this. And he's less aggressive now. You know, he lived in Alta for 20 years. And
I would say his best years were then and there.
You can only imagine that when he lived in Alta for 20 years in a row, he skied a lot differently than he does now. And I've had many days with him where he is skiing this ski and it just works so well. So like somebody like him, like I feel like I could put my dad on a Ranger 90 and he would have a great time. Like he's currently a Navigator 85 skier. I don't know. Could be a reasonable transition. So I don't think it like will quite satisfy a true expert skier. Like when I ski that Ranger 96, I have a much different reaction to that ski than this ski. But I definitely think there's a customer out here, and I think it's kind of a bummer that this ski gets overlooked pretty consistently.
Yeah.
Like I honestly cannot tell you when the last time I saw one on snow was.
No, you don't see a whole lot of them in the wild.
No. Which is too bad.
Yeah.
You know, like how many people have you seen skiing a kendo that arguably would be better off on a Ranger 90?
There's a lot more Johns out there these days that we see versus someone who's fully accessing the potential of a kendo.
Right. So hopefully these videos and these conversations help kind of unveil some skis that really are good and should be skied by more people.
Yeah, totally. And like, I agree with that bump premise as well. You know,
it's just such a good,
yeah, it's easy to maneuver.
The shape, but then like the build is supportive and yeah.
No, totally.
It's like every characteristic that you would want in a mogul ski is in the Ranger 90.
I don't think I'd say the same about this Evolve 90. I did not pick this ski for its mogul properties.
If I skied moguls on an Evolve 90, it would look so weird.
I remember, negative 40 grams.
You did it again, it's all right.
I remember when this thing first came out and we skied it together and, you know, first run down nosedive and I was instantly sold. It's like, yep, this thing has a ton of potential. What a smooth and clean carving ski. And we did a few runs, you know, front side stuff. And then we're like, let's go into the bumps and trees and go ski goat. And I remember skiing the moguls on goat, which are, if you're unfamiliar, are very haphazardly placed and about as unrhythmic and unforgiving as you're going to get.
At least a double fall line. Might be triple fall line. I don't even know if you can have a triple fall line.
It's rough. It's a rough trail.
It's a weird trail.
And it took all I had to link together 5 of what I would consider decent mogul turns.
Yeah, there's generally like no rhythm skiing goat.
Yeah.
And
not totally the ski's fault, you know. It was very terrain
partly
specific,
the ski's fault, because if you did the same thing on an Origin 96, how much different would you feel?
Yeah, quite a bit different. So this thing certainly has the shape and the build that push it more to the front side of the spectrum.
Yeah.
That's okay. In that realm, this thing is incredibly quiet and just insanely smooth. They use 3 vertical metal struts, so we do get that blend of poplar and bamboo in here. 3 vertical metal struts, and then carbon stringers along the top too. So there's a lot going on in this build. And when you're taking a horizontal metal laminate and then turning it sideways, doesn't really matter how like short it is, it really boosts the performance of that material. So having those 3 struts in there goes a long way in just increasing the smoothness of the ski and just keeping it very consistent from tip to tail.
Yeah.
So interesting build. They, as we were talking about core thickness earlier, they do a lot of that here as well. So with a lighter weight wood like bamboo, in order to get it to perform the same way as poplar or beech or other denser woods, they just have to stack it higher. And that's pretty consistent throughout, where we do see that vertical sidewall consistently through the ski.
On trail, I've always thought that Evolve 90 and Declivity 92 have a lot of similarities. Like both very, very quiet, smooth.
Yep.
Like the vibration damping and just you don't feel anything really through your feet. But that one's a little bit more precise on a firm groomer, where Declivity is willing to trade off a little bit of that precision for off-piste maneuverability.
Yeah, and the other thing is that this shares more shaping with your Kesley.
Exactly.
So it's not as spooned out in the shovel here, nor is it as kind of, you know, variable or rockered in the tail.
That's kind of why I really felt like I needed to specify there that I'm only talking about on firm snow.
Yeah. But similar to your Kesley over there, and this would be a good little kind of comparison, we're dealing with that, you know, lack of taper in the shovel, dealing with a long effective edge, and then in the tail,
squared off
tail. You can use yours there. The tail is also very similar in terms of how square and flat they are.
This is squarer
and certainly more metallic.
Yep.
You know, the principles are similar, but the way they go about building them are considerably different. But due to that, this has a very long effective edge, and that combined with the build makes for just an incredibly silent ski. So true tip to tail edge contact, you know, very minimal splay and rocker in the tail. And that's where you kind of get hung up if you're looking for something that has more off-piste capabilities.
Yeah.
It's doable, but you're working more to get it. That's the trade-off.
The 100's way better. off trail.
Yeah.
Just the added surface area, it makes edge release easier.
Yep.
Like you can ski it at a flatter edge angle and more easily at least. So it is interesting because I don't mind skiing that 100 off trail, but the 90, yeah, it's just a little, it's like too knifey.
Yeah, I really, really enjoy this thing in that on-trail format.
Me too.
Love it.
Yeah,
I mean, it's so engaging, 18.5 meters. And that's pretty similar to your Kesley there. I think that was 18.8.
Yeah, just, 18.8.
Just short of 19. So those, along with this Dynastar, the M Pro, some of the longer turn shapes on the wall.
Yeah.
And you can really feel it in this, how it just enjoys being stood on and just kind of ripped through carved turns.
Definitely.
But high levels of smoothness and sophistication. And like we've talked about before, it's not like typical Liberty. You know, when you think about Liberty, you're thinking Origin and you're thinking Helix and Freeride, Freestyle. But Evolve is really taking that front side and carving capability and putting their spin on it, but also keeping it in that fun and smooth and kind of generally inspiring spectrum.
You know what it can do? It's quite good in off-piste situations that aren't bumped up.
Sure.
So if we're talking like wind-buffed terrain or something like that, it actually excels in that application. It's really just like, it's much more of an East Coast thing.
Yeah.
Like, which makes sense because they're from Colorado.
Right.
Think of at least upper mountain terrain at Breckenridge. Like we've both skied Breckenridge quite a bit. I can't think of anything there that wouldn't be able to handle on a lower snow day.
Right.
But then like lower mountain, it starts to get bumpier. I hesitate to use the word tight to describe trees in Breckenridge because they aren't anywhere really.
Well, they're unskiable when they're that tight.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, just those pines are weird.
Yeah, but that's kind of how I think about that ski, is if it's bumped up or tight trees or anything like that, it's going to be a handful. If it's open and like smoother skiing surface, it's going to be great.
Yeah, no, I love these Evolves, and you know, like a lot of the skis here, if it's part of a bigger group, you know, like this is a very well-rounded width. And
totally.
I mean, that's a water is wet type of statement, but at the same time, it's pretty true when you're thinking of Evolve, 84, 90, 100, 110. Like, yeah, the 90s really does a lot of things really well.
Yep. Finally got to the ski that really matches my sweatshirt the best. This is the Kesley ZX92, and this is like kind of the opposite of what we were just describing with the Evolve 90 there. This ski is quite maneuverable, quite agile. Take it into bumps and tight trees here in Stowe, and you're going to have a great time. Take it onto a groomer, and you won't feel nearly the same precision. So again, Poplar and Beach in this ski, the difference between MX and ZX is this is more of a macro block construction, and of course we dropped the metal. So 1,700 grams, significantly lighter, and also significantly softer flex pattern. And then you really feel it in the tip in this one with the Hollowtech with like less supporting materials in there as it really starts to get soft. And then shape here is, again, just wildly different from a ski like the MX. And this is, where were we with Blade Optic 92 when you were like, this has Freeride influence. This ski does too. What's the widest ZX?
There's like a 117?
I wanted to say 118.
There's a teens.
There's a big one.
Yeah.
So a lot of that performance and that design, that concept of ski manufacturing or ski performance is brought from that super, super wide powder ski into this 92. So tons of tip rocker, a lot of taper too, maybe like the most taper. Like, I don't know, is Blade Optic more taper?
I mean, it's a little
gotta
bit
be
rounder,
similar.
but it's similar.
I suppose M Pro 90 would be like a weird argument that that's more tapered, but it's different. This is more pronounced or more severe in how it actually tapers in. And then it is a directional ski. You know, that's a big difference between this and Blade Optic. Blade Optic has so much more tail rocker than this ski, where this is, sure, there's tail rocker back there, but not much. There is a little bit of taper too, but again, not not much, especially when you compare it to the tip. 16.4 meter turn radius in this 176, and this thing, although it can carve, I don't think it carves particularly well.
Not in a long turn.
No, and it just doesn't feel like super engaging with the tip shape. Like it just kind of like wanders as you're entering a carving turn, but it's tremendous in the trees and like short skidded turns on the side of the trail and stuff like that. It is awesome. So if you're looking for like a narrower directional off-piste ski, I can't really think of anything that's significantly better than this.
No, and I kind of regret not taking that earlier. I'm a huge ZX fan.
I couldn't believe that you didn't take this earlier.
That's a mistake.
I wore the right sweatshirt, so it all worked out.
Yeah, you earned it in the end.
But it really, you know, I think we already kind of described it when we were talking about the MX. Like, these skis are just wildly different.
Totally.
And you could own both.
Yep.
And it would be like a really, really nice two-ski quiver. Or maybe you go MX88 and then ZX100 for a little bit more soft snow performance. But if you live in a place that doesn't get a ton of fresh snow, then why not? Why not go MX88 and ZX92? You'd have two distinctly different tools for two different jobs.
Yeah, and very similar to Blade Optic, where you're taking that the narrowest free ride ski.
Yep, because Blade Optic goes up to what, 114?
Yeah.
Yeah, so very, very similar concept. This is more of a narrow powder ski than anything else.
Yep, totally.
But I think it's awesome. I think like it's nice to have a Kesley that's a little bit more affordable too.
Yeah.
You still don't see a tremendous amount, which isn't too surprising to me, but it's a cool option.
Yeah, no, and as a new shape, I think that's going to open up possibilities for more skiers.
Yeah, I think so too. Does it have every quality that I think of when I think of Kesley? No, but that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Companies open to new ideas and new designs and new products.
Totally.
So I like that.
Yep.
Reaching the end here, Bob.
Getting down to it. I'm surprised that this one fell this far.
That's on you.
I know. I love this thing. This is a Armada Declivity 88C. Myself and our Armada rep, I would say we're similar in weight, maybe. He probably has more muscle and
It's a good question.
Stockiness, but I bet
you're similar in weight.
Yeah, like 225 pounds.
Yeah.
You would think that a lighter weight carbon powered ski, 1,670 grams, would not be enough to satisfy our skiing needs. But
Correct.
A few turns in on this thing and all of those fears were just evaporated.
Yeah, I was blown away when, I think it was a couple of years ago now when you first tested those skis and you were like, I love this thing. And I was like, that doesn't make sense.
Right.
But yeah, it's a real ski.
I think that I took this because I didn't want you to have it instead of taking this.
Yeah, that was a defense. The Declivity 92 was a defensive pick for sure.
Yeah, no, I think that like if I was choosing favorites or like actual skis that I would ski, this would probably go.
If you were
ahead.
building your personal quiver, I bet that would be like third or fourth or something.
Because Ripstick's high on my list too, just for what I do personally, and that's why I own a Core 93.
Yeah,
is I like the lighter weight skis for my own personal skiing.
Yep.
Because I'm not like pursuing top end speed.
Yeah.
And if I want to go straight, I'll go straight, and that's fine. It doesn't operate like a high end GS ski. But for short, quick turns on the side of the trail, bumps, trees, an off-piste adventure, I love how this ski combines that lightweight and energetic, pretty stiff
supportive flex pattern. Totally.
Here, give that thing a flex.
No,
there, Jeff.
Oh boy, is it stiffer than Brahma?
I don't know, but it's definitely stiffer than Ripstick.
Was I completely wrong?
And right up there with Core. Sure.
Maybe I already flexed this thing into a softer flex pattern, but it's at least similar.
Karuba wood core, light wood core, same wood as 92 Ti, but they do use just vertical carbon stringers. So different carbon power than what we see from Ripstick and Core, and even the next ski that you're going to talk about there. Just a different theory, but certainly as we see, it doesn't mean that a ski without metal is less stiff. So you're getting that engagement from, from the carbon and then from that slightly longer effective edge. So similar to what we saw with the 92 Ti, it's actually a very traditional ski. So very minimal rocker. I mean, I would say that combined with some of the other minimally rockered skis, this is very, very a fully cambered ski. It
actually probably has a very similar shape to Brahma.
Yeah.
It's really just the build where these skis differ completely.
Yeah. And then not a lot of rocker in the tail here as well. So slightly rounded taper, but really more of that traditional ski, and that's not surprising why I really enjoy it.
Yep.
Is I'm more of a traditional skier, and so I like to feel that full long effective edge from tip to tail and really engage the ski in that smooth turning style.
Yep.
And when you're going off trail and adventuring through bumps and trees, I don't like lugging extra weight around with me.
No, it makes sense.
I'm not an agile person because of my size.
Right.
So I prefer it when my equipment helps me out in that regard. But incredible skis. I am ecstatic that they dropped that far on the list.
Certainly works better for you than it does for me.
Yeah.
I have less preference for those kind of shorter, quick turns on the side of the trail. You just don't see me do that very often. So
you should give it a try. It's really
I do it sometimes. I do it for them.
Yeah.
I generally don't do it much for me, but I do it to understand how a ski works. And that ski does that really well. And I would say this ski does that really well too. The difference here is, would you agree that this works better for me than it does for you?
I don't know. Just because the ski doesn't work for me, this is the longest length.
Yeah, which is that's probably where the issue is.
With that flex.
Right.
It's just for me, it's a non-starter.
Yeah.
And kind of like we talked about at the beginning, just because that is the case for me doesn't mean it's not the case for millions of people.
Sure. So one of the reasons why I picked the ski last is because I knew Bob wouldn't pick it. So I didn't have to make any defensive picks for Mindbender 90C here, knowing that they just don't really build a length that works for Bob. But I think it's a great ski. So the key here is carbon spectral braid. And I have always really liked the story of carbon spectral braid. The wood core in this ski is pretty straightforward. I think that aspen veneer wood core. But yeah, carbon spectral braid is really cool. I really like that they've kind of expanded the Mindbender carbon line. I think it gives more credit to this 90, where it used to just be 90 or 116.
Right.
And then it was well, why
we need more?
Why don't the middle skis have carbon? What's wrong with carbon? And I think we've proven that there's nothing wrong with carbon. With that 96 and that new 106, they're just so much fun. And hopefully that gives a little bit more attention to this ski, because I think it's really good too. And I know a lot of people that really, really like this ski, and a lot of people that would choose it just straight up over the Mindbender 89 Ti. It's just is totally dependent on skiing style. But back to carbon spectral braid. So what they do with carbon in this ski is they use this cross-hatching application of carbon, and they change the tightness of the weave, so to speak. So up here in the forebody of the ski, that carbon runs very laterally across the ski. And then as you get further and further down into the tail, you probably won't be able to see it on camera, that cross-hatching carbon applications gets much, much longer or kind of lengthened, stretched out in a longitudinal way. And what they're doing there is by having that tighter weave up in the forebody, they're giving it more torsional stiffness up here.
Yep.
So same thing that we see in the Mindbender 89 Ti. In that ski, it's using Titanal Y-beam. In this ski, they use carbon spectral braid. The benefit is the weight. So it's 1,720 grams. So it is very light, but I wish I was stronger and I could try and twist it up here. It's still torsionally stiff in this portion of the ski. So you get a softer overall flex pattern, you get a lighter ski, but you still get a ski that is pretty precise and responds really well to skier input. So I like skiing this ski a lot. Again, I don't love making short skidded turns on the side of the trail, but when I'm on this ski, I do, because it's really easy and really fun and really intuitive. I can still carve on this ski just fine. Like, you kind of showed that limit for you in the forebody, but again, like going back to ripsticks and stuff like that, for me it's more of like a benefit, because I can kind of manipulate turn initiation and manipulate how quickly the whole ski is flexing by how much I'm getting this portion of the ski to flex. And then another ski that's like tremendous in the moguls. So
yeah, and we hear about that a ton from feedback. Like,
yeah.
I've had the Mindbender 90C for years. It's the best mogul ski I've ever been on.
Totally.
It's just incredibly easy and rewarding.
Yeah.
And so like I get all that for sure.
Yeah, you're just too big.
Yeah.
And they don't make a ski long enough.
Yeah.
So kind of similar to going back here with Ranger 90 and who should be skiing it. I definitely think you should have more of an off-piste focus, because then, like, if you don't and you're just looking for a easier going on trail ski, I hate to use this comparison because they're wildly different price ranges, but like Starbrider 88 would be better.
Sure.
Where this, to me, leans more toward that off-piste personality.
Yeah.
But it's a great ski, and I think, like, again, there's how many people have you seen on a Mindbender 89 Ti that would be better off on a Mindbender 90C?
Unfortunately, I don't see a whole lot of people on Mindbender 89.
I know, that was a bad example. How many people do you see on a Kendo 88?
Sure, yeah.
Better off on a Mindbender 90C?
No, a lot.
I think a lot.
Yeah.
Like 30%.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, it definitely has its place in the ski world.
Right.
And I think it makes more sense now that the other carbon-powered versions of the Mindbenders are.
I hope that lets the skiers and customers out there look at this ski through a slightly different lens.
Yeah, totally.
It's not just a dumbed down intermediate ski. It's a different build. It's a different goal.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, and again, it's similar to what we talked about earlier, where it's got that build of the higher, wider skis.
Right.
So it's a high-end ski.
Totally. Like, there's nothing about the manufacturing or construction that's like low end.
Yeah.
So just need to look at these things and carefully decide what makes the most sense for you.
Poor M-Free 90.
Yeah.
But this thing has its benefits, like, for a ton of skiers.
And it goes really short too, I think.
It goes super short. So 137, I think, is the shortest length in this ski. So smaller adults, tweeners, larger children, all the way up to
beginners, intermediates.
Yeah. This M-Free doesn't use the same build, doesn't have the hybrid core, so it's just a poplar core. But it really makes a lot of sense for skiers that are looking to kind of expand and progress their abilities.
Explore what skiing has to offer.
Yeah. And that's the benefit here. So again, for me, this isn't really an option. This is the longest, 177. And it's just like, it's a weird style of build for someone with my size and style of skiing.
Yeah, and I think the best thing, the most valuable piece of information for anybody watching this video is just to point out the differences between that and the 99 and the 108.
Right.
Is they're not in the same world, even though they share a name.
Yeah.
So, and I think that can be a little bit tricky. And like, I'll also admit that I was a little bit disappointed. Like, why can't we have an M-Free 90 that has 99 build?
We looked at, or lengths.
Right.
We looked at some old Dynastar twin tips, just taking a trip down memory lane the other day. And like, I used to ski on the Distorter, which was a predecessor to this, like an 87 millimeter underfoot twin tip.
And that was like the narrower slicer.
The narrower slicer. And I skied on that like every day here.
Yeah.
And loved it.
Yeah.
And they just, they don't make this thing, if this thing came in those sizes, I'd be a lot more interested.
Yeah.
But
it's fair.
It's just there's limitations, but there's limitations for me, but there's not limitations for everyone smaller than me.
No, and like, that's actually, many of you probably know that I coach or have coached, may continue to coach. And a lot of the young, like, free ride kids ski on that.
Yeah.
And it works great because it does have that kind of off-piste mentality, not tremendously expensive, and it's not hard for them to ski, so it works really well.
Yeah, and it's a real ski. Wood core, full sidewall, all the way around. Like, it's light, 1,600 and something grams here, 1,640 in the 177. So there's like a lot to like about this thing. Good energy built in, lots of camber.
Yeah.
And that's something that really helps skiers kind of feel like they're getting more out of a ski.
Yeah.
So you're getting that energy built in. When you drive into it, it's going to rebound out. You know, just because there's no metal or stuff like that in here doesn't mean that it's not a strong and powerful thing. It's just lighter and more manageable.
20-meter turn radius.
Nice and straight. You know, that's just...
It works good for a ski like that that's intended to do everything.
Other than M-Cross, like M-Pro and M-Free are long.
Yeah.
So interesting to see that, but definitely has its place, you know, and since it goes so short, it really opens up the range, which I think is interesting. It just happened to fall to me as last pick, but doesn't mean that it should be last on people's lists.
No, I agree. And there's plenty of people out there where it should be first on your list.
Totally.
In fact, I confidently and happily recommended it to a young skier at our warehouse sale.
Yeah.
I was like, this is literally perfect.
Yeah.
He was like, I don't know if I want to be a free ride skier or a park skier, and like I just want to like do a little bit of everything. I was like, well, easy decision. Like you're gonna love this thing.
And a lot of the flatter skis that come in shorter lengths, they're heavier. They use like a composite core or something like that, and it's heavy. Yeah. These definitely have that higher quality feel for like a 137, like
with a real wood core. And
like it's a really
vertical sidewall.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool.
It's pretty awesome.
So yeah, a lot of merits to that ski, even though there's certain things that we might wish for too.
Yeah.
So that was it. Let us know what you think. Bob, the draft format was fun. I don't know if we'll do another this year.
Okay.
Maybe. Twin tips?
I don't know.
Narrow
twin tips is really where I could see it happening, but
narrow twin tip draft would be fun.
Yeah, I think front sides would be more difficult.
It'd be challenging.
Yeah.
But yeah, let us know what you think. Let us know if you have any questions as usual, or if there are any skis up here or any skis that weren't up here that you're wondering how they would compare. Yep. Just let us know in the comments, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. I think next we're going mid 100 freeride.
Another very popular category.
So that'll be a very different conversation, but yeah, really looking forward to that one. Should be out next week. So keep an eye out for that, and we will talk to you soon.
Bye.